Welcome to the Books on Air podcast. I'm Suzanne Harris, and my listeners get the story behind every book. Joining me today is Scott Kauffman. He's here to talk about his very interesting book, If Tomorrow Never Comes, What Would You Do with Your Last 24 Hours? Now, Scott is not only an author, but he's also the founder and president of ScottKauffman.com and True Destiny, a company committed to helping individuals discover and ultimately walk in their destiny. Scott is not only an author, but a life coach and a motivational speaker. He has a bachelor's degree from Southern Illinois, and I am so pleased, Scott, to welcome you to Books on Air. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure on my part.
You know, I'm always interested. I don't know where I got this idea or how this revelation came to me, but I realized one day that books are not just one thing. A book actually has two different stories. They have the story that the author writes for the reader, and that's the story that the reader reads. But there's always a story behind that book. There's always a way that that book came into being. It was thought about by the author for some reason. Can you give me the backstory behind your book?
Yeah, and you know, I'm glad that you asked that question because I think many people have gone through it, and yet some people don't want to admit that they've gone through it for whatever reason, because sometimes failure is the greatest teacher in the world, and sometimes we have to fail to be able to become that which we really are. And I had really I was working for corporate America, but I had become what I did and what I owned. And I had to lose it all to be able to say, hey, who is Scott? And what does Scott really want to do? And so when I lost it all and I found myself for the first time in my life without a job, without a vehicle, without a home, you talk about homelessness and things like that. Necessity is the mother of invention. But I had always had this thing about, there's something we're supposed to accomplish in life. What is it? What is it? And after about 6 months of just being a hermit, I realized that what my destiny was, and I love to write about destiny, was to help people discover what their destiny is. And really the premise behind this book is to tell someone, listen, you're not here on this planet for the free popcorn. You were born for a reason. Find out what it is. And so if I went up to 100,000 people and said, listen, you have only 24 hours left to live. That's it. What are you going to do? Well, the vast majority of those 100,000 people would say, I'm going to quit this job that I've hated for the last 30 years, and I'm going to finally do something that I've always wanted to do. And I agree with them. And then they'll say, I'm going to go travel this far-off land that I always wanted to travel, but I never found time to do. Okay, you're once again like that 99.9% of the population. And then I'm going to tell those closest to me that I love them. And my point in saying that is, okay, if you do it now when you only have 24 hours, why not do it when you have an undetermined amount of 24 hours? Find that passion, find that thing that you were born to do, and go do it.
I love that. You know, you've written 4 other books. Mm-hmm. Why was it time to write If Tomorrow Never Comes? Why was it now?
Because I think there are people out there that are just walking around, maybe you can call it a daze, wondering, oh God, what am I good at? What am I good at? What am I good at? You know, and they really beat themselves up because they haven't taken the time to discover it. Why haven't they taken the time? Well, because there's bills to pay, tuition, mortgage, rent, this and that. They get locked into a job, not because they want to be there, but because they almost feel forced to be there. But then they've been kind of conditioned to believe that that's all there is. You don't have a choice in life. And sometimes the choices we make, yeah, they're scary. There's no doubt. Sometimes it means stepping away from everything and doing what is in your heart to do. So I wanted to bring out in the book, and yes, it was the one that I wrote. Actually, the fourth one is what I wrote. The first one that I wrote hadn't been published yet. So this one was one that just spoke to me, because it was like, people, you need to understand that you have a purpose. You have a reason to be here. And how much better is life when you are doing what you love, okay? And it's not work. So your occupation is now your vocation. And that makes all the difference in the world. It really, really does.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that your book is absolutely perfectly timed, because I think the COVID epidemic, pandemic, whatever words you want to use to describe what's happened to us for the last 2.5, 3 years, has made people reevaluate. I think it's made them want to think about exactly the point that you're making with your book. They want to think about, what is it I want to do? Not what do I have to do to pay the bills, to, pay the car payment, pay the house payment, blah, blah, blah. What is it I really want to do, and can I marry those two ideas so that I get to do what I want to do and at the same time meet my obligations? So I think you're absolutely right on target. The writing process is always kind of interesting for me. How did you write the book? Because the idea is such a big idea. What's your writing process like? Do you outline? What do you do?
I do not, and I have people that are absolutely amazed by it. I get the title of the book first. That's it. Always the title of the book. And then I get the chapters. So whether there's 25 chapters or 40 chapters, I literally get the chapter, and I write it down on a piece of paper. That's the only thing I write on paper is the chapter names. Then I sit down, start each chapter with a quote, and then I write. And I honestly will tell you that I've got to go back and read it a day later to see what I wrote. But I will literally write a chapter a day until the book is written. So let's say, for argument's sake, that there's 25 chapters in a book. I'll have an introduction, the 25 chapters, and then an epilogue. So I'll write that book in 27 days. I can't take credit for what I write, because I literally download it. I mean, it's just like it comes in and from source and then onto the keypad, and then boom. And my editor will tell you she's never moved a paragraph in a manuscript, which is, it's kind of nice to hear.
Wow.
But yeah, I love the writing. If you had asked me 15 years ago, would I have been an author, I would have said, you're crazy. Never was a thought in my mind. I was going to go up that corporate ladder and be CEO sometime. But that just wasn't what the Lord had in store for me. And I am so thankful that I chose this route. You can have all the accoutrements of success. You can have the big house, the fancy car, lots of money. But if you aren't doing that one thing that's inside your heart, and for me, it's writing. If you're not doing that one thing, there will be a void, and that void's not going to be filled by an even bigger home, fancier car, or more money. And so to me, writing it's my happy place. It's what I enjoy it. I can't explain to you how I did it. I can't explain why. I can tell you why I do it, because I want people to learn their significance in this world. We're just not human beings, ladies and gentlemen. We're not. There's so much more to us. And the gifts that you have inside are there to help other people discover the gifts that they have inside, so that they can help someone else discover, and someone else discover, and someone else discover. And so when I sit down to write a book, that's what it's about. But it's about helping one person, believe it or not. If only one person opens this book and reads it, and only one person gets that aha moment, then I have done what I was charged to do.
I love it. Who did you see in your mind that would read the book, and that was there an audience that you were writing for, or did you just sort of think in general terms about people?
You know what? I think people in the, like, let's say 35 to 55, because they have been so cemented in their ways, and they sometimes feel that they can't go on. And that really is where I want to, yes, it'd be great if one discovered their destiny when they were 15 years old and got released in that destiny, and they had a lifetime to work in that area. But what about those that feel stuck? And now the clock is ticking, the clock is ticking, the clock is ticking, and they feel like they've missed the best part of their life, or their best part is passed them by. And I always tell them, look, you haven't achieved your destiny yet. And they say, well, how do you know that? I said, because you're still breathing. Once you've done what you were sent here to do, you will have taken your last breath and gone on to your next journey. Okay? So time is an illusion. Don't worry about time. But those that are in that age bracket, I think, have given up a little and lost a little bit of hope. And I want to give them that hope back, that no matter how old you are, you can still accomplish the greatest thing in your life if you will just allow yourself to grow into who you really are.
Let's give our listeners an overview of what the book includes, just a general overview of what they'll find when they open the book for the first time.
Well, the book is written in a way where if you want to read chapter 1 day, and then you want to read chapter 16 the next day, and then maybe jump to chapter 5 and chapter 21, they're like almost little vignettes, individual vignettes, so that they can pick up a piece of something on every chapter. And what it does is I want them to look at it, and I want them to put it in a way that, hey, this spoke to me. And you may take away just large amounts of information from a chapter, and yet you may take only one sentence, but that one sentence can absolutely revolutionize how you see yourself in this thing we call the universe. And so it's really just picking up those parts that you maybe have forgotten, those parts that you haven't thought about, those parts that you were afraid to identify because you were told at some point in time, oh, you can't be a professional bungee jumper. There's no money in that. But yet that's your passion. And so it's written in a way for you to discover, accept, and walk in that passion that has been in you since the beginning of time. It's never changed, and it will never change. You can walk around it, and you can forget about it, and you can bury it down, but eventually that passion is going to come up again. And then you're going to have the choice to make. Do I follow it, or do I bury it down again? And so if you bury it down again, you'll go on a year, 2, 3, who knows, and then it's going to creep up again. So the book is there to say, hey, don't keep burying it. Accept it. And when you start accepting it, when you can say, hey, now I see it, watch doors open. And as those doors open, then your life fundamentally changes, because you are now doing the one thing that you were created to do.
It strikes me that this book would be a book that someone is not just going to sit down and, as you said, do chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter, etc.
Yeah.
They're going to sit down and they'll maybe they just let the book open on its own and see where it starts, and maybe that's the place they start, or maybe they do read chapter 1, but then they don't just go ahead and go to chapter 2. They close the book and they start thinking about what's in chapter 1 and what you said in chapter 1 and what they're taking away in chapter 1. And maybe that does lead them to chapter 7 or 8 or 9, but this is a book that I believe you would not just read once. This is a book you would keep, and that periodically you'll reach for Scott's book, open it up, and find something new each and every time you open the book. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and that's very true, because how many times do we read different books, and then we'll go through it from cover to cover, we'll put it down, and then maybe 6 months later we'll pick it up again, and it's like you're reading it